All right, good morning, happy Monday, people. Welcome back. Bob's here, ready to break down some Bitcoin. We're getting right down to it this morning. Weekly chart in front of us here, and probably could actually take a look at the monthly today as well. But obviously, you can see here, a couple good things happened for us this weekend. We did close above the 200 simple on the weekly chart. Beautiful thing there. Already we've worked on a retest of it, basically at about this $23,000 level, pretty well evenly at 23,000. We've talked about it a little bit before. Volume, we're getting massive volume spikes in here, right? Like, this is from a weekly standpoint. We haven't seen this kind of volume in ages. I mean, I don't even. If I looked at this chart, I don't even know, just kind of going back on it here, like this is easily the most volume that this Binance chart has had in its entirety, and this goes all the way back to August of 17, so 5 years we're talking at this point, and that's easily the most weekly volume, only exceeding or more closely, this is the only one that's even remotely close, really, other than maybe this guy here. So I mean, if we were going to sit here and say, hey, where do we think a good spot to see a turnaround is? I mean, what are we talking about here, right? I mean, this was essentially the start of a turnaround that took place here when we had this massive volume spike, and then it had all this positive movement during this time period, but the volume was tiny. Now we're finally in a position where we've got the change of direction and massive volume with it. So question becomes, is this the one that sustains itself? Can we look back on this in a few months and we do in fact see Bitcoin way up here, pushing, let's even say up all the way up here to this 1.618 fib level here, 52,000. I mean, that would be amazing, right? To go from 17.6 all the way back up to about 52. Again, not saying that'll happen overnight, but I mean, we break this midline here, the measured move. Once we break that midline and break this upper trend line here, the measured move out of there takes us right up to the 21 simple on the weekly chart. That alone gets us back to about 30,000. So, again, there's some feasibility there. This falling wedge, you can see the MACD wants to try to curl upwards. The histogram is working on curling its way back into positive territory. The RSI, we got the bounce off of this lower trend line that we were looking for last week. It popped. Now it is slightly down again to start this week, testing the support of the 200 simple on the weekly chart. Short of coming out and sitting here saying to you guys that everything's going to definitely happen, that looked great. Like that was an incredible month out of Bitcoin. We got everything we needed, really. So now the question becomes, where is it logical to expect a retracement to? And let's just go ahead and eliminate for a moment the drawings on my monthly chart here. So, we talked about it. We needed to recover the 50 simple on the monthly chart. We needed to recover the 21s or the 200 simple on the weekly. We got both of them all in 1 month. So now the only question I have at this point is, from a monthly standpoint, in order to get a true reversal, because really, right now, think of this almost like an oversold bounce on the monthly. Not that it was, because it wasn't quite oversold on the monthly, but think of it to that extent, that it came down here to where it was just about to go into bearish control, and the bull said, no, we're going to at least maintain control long enough to keep this thing in our favor. Bought it up like they needed to, and again, now the question simply becomes, and actually this thing's moving pretty good at the moment. Now the question just becomes, again, do we only retest the 50, 22,000, $50 basically, let's call it? Great. If that ends up being the case, let's get that out of the way right away and just pop up off that and get going. Do we need to come all the way back down here? Tough to say, but this was everything that we needed out of this month to start. now you look at it and you say, all right, well, on a monthly standpoint, I don't have a whole lot of support and resistance here. So here's my support, here's my resistance. Do I think Bitcoin's heading to 41,000 by the end of the month? No, seems unlikely. Do I think this number is fairly feasible? Sure. Do I think this number is likely? Absolutely. So I think at the very least, I'm looking to see this thing come up to 27K this month. And again, it just depends on if we do have to come all the way back down here again. Do the bulls manage to buy up this double bottom? I'm sure they will. So, I mean, if we see anything down at 20,000 again, and then we get support there on like a daily or a weekly basis, boom, that's off and running right there. I would say that this level here will be defended heavily by the bulls as well, this 22,000-ish zone. So that's really what we're going to be looking forward to. I'd love to just see it tap down on here and go. And again, if we come back over to the weekly chart, that seems like it would be feasible for it to do so. That would kind of backtest this wick right here, right at 21.8. I actually had that number kind of pegged as a potential retracement recently. So yeah, I mean, there are a few different things that could play out there. That weekly chart looks good though. Monthly looks good for now. Daily chart, this is where I think things get a little more interesting, and let's kind of alter the view a little bit just so we can see here. Now, we've had this parabola working for a bit now, and I'm going to adjust this a little bit because I don't think that this was right anymore. I don't know that it is going to need to come all the way to here. I've got a sense now. Look, if we come down here to this 22 range and we don't find support, then things get ugly. This thing zips right out of here all the way down, and who knows where it stops. I mean, it'll bounce here probably, but if this thing does not find the support of the 21 here, things become a little more problematic. But again, for right now, I'm not caught up on that. We got a few things that potentially are working in our favor here. One of those being that, and I got this blue line on here for a reason. I've mentioned it. This is where I've just kind of noticed that for Bitcoin specifically, where it tends to find support sometimes, and then ultimately leads to further bullish moves. Well, right now on the daily, we're sitting on top of it. So again, it's feasible this thing holds up in here. I'm not counting on it. I do think that it's much more likely we're just going to find a way to slow land here and then take off. So, who knows for sure. I mean, none of this is a given, but that's kind of what I'm looking at the moment. And the question would be, does this need to come all the way back down to this line, or is it just like all these subsequent lows right here, they just keep getting higher? Do we maybe only come down to right here and then tap and go? Tough to say at the moment. I mean, this is not exactly like, every time we see something like this, it normally is followed by a pretty good pullback, and it so far has been. It really took through most of the day yesterday before it finally started a pullback, though it really had you kind of wondering what was going to take place there, and then finally it started falling off the ledge. But I mean, this parabola is still intact for now. Again, I'm not sure base-wise how many bases we've technically got here. 1, 2, 3, this may be 4, 5, and then dump. I think that's probably a possibility, if not a logical conclusion to reach there. If this would have been base 3, we didn't get nearly the push out of base 3 that I would have expected. But nonetheless, I mean, we got the push out of this base. And again, we've talked about this before. I could show you like parabolas. They form 5 total bases, the 5th one being basically the apex of the move, and then it dumps out the other side. But again, it's just tough to say because the 3rd base would typically be the one with the largest pump that comes out of it, and this, we didn't get a huge pump out of here. In fact, we couldn't even break through this level right here still. So now just a matter of, hey, if we come back down 21.8, 22,000, tap, go, and let's just get on out of here. So potentially maybe we're looking at a couple days of downside, the pop, and then I do expect that after we get whatever pop comes up to here, this thing will roll over, at least temporarily. It'd be nice if it came up, popped, and then rolled over, retested this as support, but again, who knows for sure what will happen there. But yeah, I mean, again, everything's looking pretty good overall. I mean, I have no complaints. The red days here, the volume is reducing. Today, obviously, we still got half a day to go, but even if you doubled up the volume that's in there, it only takes it up to about here. Declining price, declining volume should be a bullish reversal signature. So, again, we are looking for a reversal in here at some point. Does this candle end up looking like this one right here? If it does, and it starts to happen real soon, say we close out the day above, say, 23.5, all of a sudden I'm going to immediately flip back bullish here, because if we get a nice long wick and if this thing even goes slightly green, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, all right, then the next day this thing probably does pop up out of there. So, again, timing never works out the way you think it's going to, but again, we're potentially right here on the precipice of a big move out of Bitcoin. The concern, kind of similar to what we dealt with over here. We got a top, bearish divergence. Obviously, you got the 8 indicators that are saying it's a bearish divergence, and I'll show you where 3 of them are at least. MACD histogram. This set a higher high than this part of the histogram, yet this set a higher high than this on the price action, bearish divergence. Here on the stochastic RSI, we had a high, slightly lower high on the stochastic when we made this high, same concept. And then here and here, this one almost looks like a class C style, so where it would be like the least impactful type. But again, we got that over here too, and then all of a sudden you see this thing just die. So, really, actually, now that I'm saying that out loud and I'm looking at this formation versus this one, it becomes a little more concerning that we potentially wouldn't find the support of the 21 here. I think that if we don't find the support here on the 21, then my thought process would be that we will find support at the 50 here on the daily chart, and it will support us just long enough to tap again on this lower trend line, maybe hold this as a low, because we don't want to set a lower low than this. This would be problematic if we did that. Then it's much more likely that we come down into this territory. But if we come down here and simply find support, say at this 21.3, 21.4-ish range, then it can bounce around in here waiting for the 21 to recover. All of a sudden, if that happens, then the 21 potentially is already ready to start moving up. All of these moving averages move down, so then it becomes much more likely that you not only meet them but exceed them in that next move. So it should be interesting. I'd say probably from a weekly standpoint, I would think that I'd like to see us hold 22, but and that's from a monthly standpoint as well. But I think that this is just as logical of a conclusion, that we are going to come back down and at least put a retest down in here, find the support of the 50. You lose both of those, and again, you lose the 21, lose the 50, and all of a sudden you are, in fact, down here again. This is a bear flag. We've talked about this before, or at least it has the makings of a bear flag. But it doesn't mean it has to fall out of it, right? Like that's the thing. That patterns, 66% of the time, approximately, the patterns hold water, right? That what you see is what you will get, and then there's that other third of the time where it doesn't work out that way. So is this going to be that 1/3? Who knows? We're going to find out before too long. But again, these are the levels I'm looking for. And really, again, I don't want to see this thing come below 21.2. If it comes down to 20 again, that was the monthly open for July. And the monthly close for June was basically right at 20,000. And again, that would give us a double bottom on the monthly. That would, but again, to get a true double bottom, you close down there. We would not want to see it close down there. We'd want to see it bounce off of that level. Now, the alternative concept would be if we do flip bearish, then this potentially does come all the way down here, and then we close out the month here to get a monthly double bottom officially. But again, either way you look at it, you can rest assured the bulls are going to defend that level right off the bat. So, I would say that it might be a waste of your money to put a buy down there, but it would be a logical place to put one if you wanted to try and catch something that seemed like it might be a quote unquote next bottom, another local bottom. That would be somewhere that I'd certainly consider as an option, because it will certainly be heavily defended. And let's just go back to that real quick so we can see it on here. Monthly chart is what we need. Clean that up. So again, down here, the bulls are going to defend this. So just assume that you could probably buy, if you set a buy down here and it actually even makes it there at some point during this month, you're at least going to get a nice pop, and maybe it comes back up into here, gets rejected, but that's a solid 10% move out of Bitcoin there. The monthly charts, they're maybe a little less predictability just because of the fact that we're talking 30 days worth of price action, and it's not very often that you string together, multiple big green months. So just during certain, portions of the moves. Otherwise, it's down, up, down, up. Here was a big one, right? That was a big one. I don't know. This would be amazing, though, right? If we could just, even if it came back down, tapped it, and blasted it, that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly fine. The issue here, again, would just be in the event that, say, this does just end up popping through here and falling down, 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 then you're looking something more in this range. And that would be the next support down. Ideally, we're not talking about that 30 days from now, that we even came anywhere near this number. Because if we do, then honestly, at that point, this becomes the ceiling at that stage. Now, the interesting thing, and I don't know, maybe I've gone into detail about this before, but a lot of times when you're looking for reversal moves, what you get is 3 downside moves. If you look at on the price action, you don't really see 3 downside moves. I mean, you got this guy here that was a downside, then this big downside. But on the RSI, it's fairly more evident. Downside, downside, downside. 3 drives lower, coming out of a bullish move to begin with. So from March 2020 to April of 21, basically was all bullish. You get a 3 drive lower pattern and then break out from there. So, again, there are different ways we could look at this and say, all right, yeah, this would be logical to expect this or this, but I do think that at this point, one of 2 things is going to happen, and I suppose this seems totally logical and coin flippish, but we're either going to come down here, or we're only going to come down to here, and then this thing goes back up the other side. And it just depends. But again, same concept here. We had a ton of volume in that March 2020 sell-off. We got a ton of volume here to say that, yeah, this has at least potential to do some turnaround for us and start working our way back to the upside. But again, don't be surprised if we first see some downside in the potential short term. But again, that all being stated, I do think that we do probably see some bullish action out of here. I just don't know if it necessitates moving back a lot further first. So we shall see. Let's get zoomed in on just some real short-term time frames here, see what's going on. 4-hour chart. So I had been watching this guy most of the weekend, really. And I think we're, depending on where you put this upper trend line from this bull flag or from the bear flag, I mean, we're out of it, we're in it, out of it, in it. This thing will more than likely drag down to the bottom of the pattern again. The concept of TA is that you assume that a pattern holds up until it doesn't. Well, let's look at this seriously. We've got this drive, this drive, this drive. So we've got 3 drives lower in this pattern. you know, if you're a betting person, the odds say that really you just short here and expect that you're going to ride it all the way through the bottom. That would be conventional logic. But, you know, again, I think it's safe to say that something has changed in the market here, right? Like I mean, this feels a lot better. This pattern here, this one feels better than this one did, right? Like, I don't know if anybody remembers what this felt like, but it didn't feel like this does. We definitely did not get a ton of positive altcoin movement through here. Here we've had a fairly significant amount of positive altcoin movement. This just feels different. So for me to sit here and tell you that I know for sure that this lower trend line is going to hold up, or that we don't even get down to it, we find support here or something, like, I can't tell you that for sure, but it feels like that should be the case, right? Like, it just feels that way. But that's what this market's all about. It makes you get a certain feeling, and then all of a sudden it flips on you. I think it's safe to say, though, that this trend line is fairly accurate in terms of the location of it, just based on the fact that, you know, in both of these bullish fake outs, you came down under. In this one, you actually popped back up above it, which was even, I mean, that's like a double bullish fake out. That's painful. But this one popped up above it, didn't even close the candle out, and said, all right, we're ready to go down. So this thing just steamrolling at the moment. Really in, you know, just a handful of hours, it's down, you know, $800,000-900,000. We'll see. This thing, it looks like it's maybe forming a falling wedge. That might be the one thing. So if this thing doesn't fall out the bottom of this, you know, if it doesn't just fall through all of these moving averages right here, then this could very well end up being a falling wedge, which 2/3 likely it breaks to the upside. And it would be similar to this concept here, right? This was a falling wedge. What ended up happening, though, is you got this bearish fake out. So I figure I'll kind of prep mentally for something similar. The only thing is this particular falling wedge is already much smaller than this one is. You know, they don't have the same amount of time frame, you know, implemented into them at the moment. Like, this one's been going on much less time than this whole thing here. But this is a very tight falling wedge. You know, feasibility that this thing comes down into here and then pops up to this line, maybe gets rejected again, then downside, or we just outright boom right up through here. So we got a few ways this one could go to. I'd say that we're right now, like, this was one drive lower, this is drive 2. So we probably get a slight recovery, a third drive lower. Maybe we do stay at least. Maybe we don't have to come down to oversold territory this time. And maybe we actually do stay in neutral territory, so that you only come down to this like 40 level and pop up out. That would essentially be equivalent to it finding support in here. And then the other thing I'm looking for, essentially right now, this thing could form into a little head and shoulder pattern. So maybe we see Bitcoin kind of wick down in here into this 22.5 range, find a way to pop back up to 23.5 to say 23.8, and then again kind of roll back down over to here, at which point we're coming down to test this guy out, the 200 on the 4-hour chart. Wherever that is, that's really where you would want your buys right now, in terms of if you're looking for a good location for entry, you know, kind of as a short-term long opportunity. This is where I would look at it here, because the likelihood is we'll get some volatility that will bring it back down to here at some point. And it may just tap down and then get bought right up and try to make another breakout attempt. So we got a few things that we can be on the lookout for here that could be of interest. But either way, again, I think realistically this month we're probably looking at something, you know, again, assuming that things don't just come off the rail, the downside for this month should probably not be below 20K. The upside for this month has potential to go 27, 30, 32 if things stay bullish. So it'd be nice to see the bulls show up and keep doing what they've been doing. I just don't know if it's feasible. And then again, the kind of the bearish outlook would simply be that we got to come back down and actually retest this level. But again, we'll just hope that we'll just hope that doesn't end up being the case, because that just sounds painful and brutal. Hourly, same idea here. Falling wedge. Come down here, tap this 200 simple, break back up to the break back out to the upside, and it would make sense for it to do so, simply because if you look at this hourly chart here, it's fair, it's fairly safe to say that this thing is indeed a small, say falling broadening wedge, or a just a falling wedge in general on the RSI. So that would be totally logical to believe this thing will come down here, tap, and then go again, and then just a matter of what the upside would be, 23, 4, 5. Come up here, put in a bearish retest at 24,000, and then roll over. We got a few outcomes that could potentially come into play there. So we'll see. We'll see. Real short-term time frames as usual. Right now we got this kind of, well, let's at least go out to a 15-minute. We got this little trend line here. Seems to be holding up fairly well on the price action at the moment, and it's holding it down. Matter of fact, we just got a wick up through here a little bit ago that got sold off. Kind of a double top look on the 15 minutes. So yeah, it's this 22,777 is where I kind of had pegged as for another potential very short-term long opportunity. And again, I would look at that as a possibility, just because it may, potentially you come down here, you wick down to here, support, and then you're popping back up here again. So a lot of interest this month. Let's see if Bitcoin can indeed continue this upside push, take the alts with it, see if we can get a little summer of DeFi or something like that. That's been a common thing over the handful of years. So let's see what happens. Otherwise, appreciate your time this morning. We appreciate you in general. Look forward to catching up tomorrow. Let's go Bitcoin.